Okay, fantastic. Then ja, goeiemôre Simon. Ons doen hierdie ene nou in die oggend vir 'n slag en dan gaan ons hom nou net op sosiale media plaas onder die Suidlanders Media kanaal natuurlik op YouTube waar almal dit gaan kan kyk. En hoe gaan dit vanmôre met jou? Kom ons begin by die begin.
It's going shockingly badly, thank you. I've had a terrible past 24 hours. At the moment, my bucky, I had to, I don't, long story. I stupidly confused my visa, one of my visas, with my passport's dates.
Okay.
And I have to go overseas. I had a look at the passport and discovered that I was wrong by 3 years. Had to race to get a passport renewal. That took 4 days. Hours, but I've known it to be worse. There was an elderly lady sitting next to me, a local farmer, actually, as it turned out. And because we were the only two white people in there and we were sitting next to one another, we chatted, and it was a lekker chat. But this lady couldn't resist the urge to keep on telling me about how much geduld you need for the new South Africa. Oh, dear me. So the whole place was, she was talking at the top of her voice, and it turned out later that she's half deaf. So, she was speaking at the level that she kind of
Yeah.
required to hear herself, which
Yeah.
meant that the entire place could hear her talking about the failures of the new South Africa. In the end, it was sorted out, but that began a shocking series of events. I missed last night. As you know, I only got home shortly before 9 o'clock. And when I got home, my vehicle's remote controls stopped working, so I had to smash my window. Now I have a bucky with a smashed window. That's going to cost me an arm and a leg. I couldn't unlock it manually with the key. Why, I don't know. Can't
Yeah.
tell you. And I've got no way of driving it because the remote controls don't work. So yeah, I'm having a bit of a shocker, but it's nice to be here, Marius. It's nice to be with you
Ja.
this morning.
Ja, altyd ook lekker om jou hier by ons te hê, Simon. Jy het vroeër vanoggend vir ons gesê jou main topic vir vandag is die goudprys wat die hemelhoogtes ingeskiet het.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, the gold price is now hovering at just under $3,000 an ounce. Excuse me. An ounce being a troy ounce, which is 31.1 grams, not 28.5 grams, 31.1 grams, a troy ounce of gold. And some certain contracts at the moment are trading at just over $3,000 an ounce of gold. And to give a simple explanation, a layman's explanation for those people who don't understand what I'm talking about, when I mention contracts and futures and derivatives, there are many and various forms of investment that you can make in gold. The only one that you should make is to buy physical gold and put it under your pillow or under your bed, so to speak. Not to have it in a bank, not to have anybody looking over. There are these other instruments, if you like. For instance, you can trade in bets on gold. What will be the price of gold in 30 days from now? And you can buy options, you can buy rights, if you like,
Ja.
which theoretically sounds great. You've bought rights access to gold. But all of the gold in the world has been sold over 20 times. Whatever gold you may have, you might say, well, that hasn't been sold 20 times. It hasn't been on the market. It's in my pocket. Yes, but on average, all of the gold that has ever been produced, all of the gold in existence, has been traded through one of these funny instruments so that the average of all of the gold is that it has been sold 20 times over, meaning that if you for average purposes, if you remove the physical gold that you have in your pocket that you haven't allowed to be traded, some gold has been sold 40 times, 60 times. So it's an enormous scheme, a scam, really.
Yeah.
The amount of gold above ground, the amount that has been produced throughout all of human history, is about 400,000 tons. Just a little bit more than 400,000 tons. And of that, about 10% is owned by China. When we say China, we mean the Chinese people, citizens, individuals, the Chinese central bank, and other organs of state of the People's Republic of China. So they've aggregated to themselves about 10% of all of the world's gold, and then the rest is spread between the other 193 countries of the world and the rest of the world's population. Now, what has been happening is all of Donald Trump's dramatic actions and statements have led some very, very big institutions to get wobbly knees about what's going on. There was a bit of a gold rush in the year 2020 during COVID when many people said, I don't like what's going on in the world. I don't like all the money that's being printed. I'm generally worried about the future. I'm going to go and buy gold. And so we saw videos of queues of people waiting for gold dealers, precious metals dealers in the USA to open their doors at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. What's happening now is very different. It is true that during 2020 and 2021, many institutional investors became more active in the gold and silver markets. And there were huge deals made, 100 million ounces, famously, one of the biggest deals. But the majority of the momentum was created by ordinary people who didn't really know what they were doing. This time around, it's different. It's the institutions who are driving this increase in the gold price, Marius.
Okay.
It's big institutions, saying something's not right.
Yeah.
US debt, US economy, US inflation, etc., etc., etc. We should probably protect ourselves by turning our funny money, our fiat currency, backed by nothing, into real assets. That has driven the price up. The price now is, right at this very moment, is $2,983. But this is the future paper spot price. So it's like a bet on what the price is going to be down the line.
Yeah.
You can't get an ounce of gold over the counter for $2,900, and it's just gone up again, $2,984. You would pay considerably more than that. This is just it's what the people go by because it's live.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of what the traders are doing on the stock market floor. So it's handy.
Yeah.
But in fact, the price of gold is much more. Now, throughout history, gold and silver have had a relationship to one another, a pretty steady, fixed relationship, and they've had a relationship to material goods. For example, the wear guild on a man's life was $30 pieces of silver. So the rabbis bought from Judas Iscariot Jesus Christ's betrayal into their hands for the price of a man. It was kind of a set figure.
Yeah.
And that set figure reigned across much of the world. Obviously, some cultures were very, very primitive, and they had no such conventions. You might not have been able to buy a house in Africa in the year 10 AD, for instance, at the same recognized price as you could in the Middle East, in the Levant, you know, Israel, Jordan, Syria, what have you, and Europe. But in those places, there would have been very much a familiar understanding of a pretty universal convention. There was a solid and reliable price for a house in terms of silver and gold, a day's wages, a bushel of wheat, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like a benchmark.
Yeah, yeah. With the advent of fiat currency, that all fell away. I don't know anybody who could tell me what is the benchmark, what is the rule of thumb for in terms of silver or gold, for a 2016 Isuzu double cab KB 250 D-Tech, who's with one side window missing.
Yeah.
But there are such norms, and people can look them up. If they're fascinated, they should do some research. Man, he's a double PhD in, believe it or not, epidemiology and virology, but he's since become an economist. Chris Martenson, Dr. Chris Martenson. Okay. Very bright man, double PhD, almost unheard of. And he has some very interesting videos, old videos now, 10 years old, 12, on those norms. There's another chap called Mike Maloney who also has a series on the conventions of gold and silver, what they always meant to all of mankind. Excuse me. Now I'll come to my point. Roughly speaking, if it was not for fiat currency undermining people's faith in gold, gold would, in dollar terms, be trading at about $30,000 an ounce now.
Sure.
And silver would be about 1/12 the value, or the cost, if you like. So 30,000, I've got a calculator in my hands here, $30,000. Silver should be, by the standards of all of history, apart from the past roughly 150 years with the advent of funny money, was worth what today's dollars can buy for 2,500 monies, as it were.
Yeah.
And that goes to show you, silver being now $33.89, that goes to show you the potential that gold has, and silver more so, because the ratio between gold and silver is presently, let's just work it out, 2,983 divided by $33.88. The ratio presently is 88 to 1. Yeah. So that's almost like an elastic band in a cartoon, children's cartoon program. A Roadrunner, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That elastic band is going to rediscover its natural state. It has
Mm.
been stretched by funny money for a very long time to the point that the ratio is almost 90 to 1, the ratio in value. But they will rediscover their natural relationship,
Mm.
the relationship that mankind understood over thousands and thousands and thousands of years consistently.
Yeah.
So let's say that gold goes up to $10,000. Silver would then trade at about $850 an ounce. And why this is such an important subject this morning is because the world is talking about it as if it's for real. That is to say, the big boffins are suggesting that this could be the big one, the big move. And of course, that is exacerbated their concerns. Let's say the fears and the hopes that are driving the market are, we've already mentioned what's going on in the USA, dollar troubles, that sort of
Mm.
thing. That's being exacerbated by events in Ukraine, by trade surpluses and trade deficits. We just happen to be at a point in time in history in which very, very clever people, very powerful, phenomenally wealthy people who control enormous institutions are saying, you know what, guys, for a long, long, long time, we undervalued gold. But it looks as if the tide is turning. It looks as if the bubble economy of the world, it looks as if the artificial value of the dollar, it looks as if US debt are coalescing
Mm.
to the point where there's going to be a big global financial shakeup. And to give you some idea of how bad it is, in the month of February, how bad things are in the world, these underlying things. In the month of February, the GDP, the gross domestic product of the United States of America, fell by 2.8%.
Sure. That's a lot.
Now, it's a lot. If you consider that gross domestic product is much like a pyramid, a ziggurat. You can only have a second layer if you have a first. So if your gross domestic product is, say, $1 trillion, the USA's is about 23 trillion. If your gross domestic product is $1 trillion, it's not because of all of the wonderful things that you did in over the past year. It's because of the centuries and centuries and centuries of building
Yeah.
capacity. You can only efficiently transport freight across the USA. People who've been there, your colleague will be able to testify to this, will know that you can drive on a big interstate, I-90, I-95, I-70, I-whatever, and not see a car for 12 vehicles. In other words, you're driving and you see vehicles oncoming. The first is a massive truck. The second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the 10th, the 11th, the 12th. Ah, here's a car again. So much of the US economy is built upon infrastructure, machinery, investment, finance, capital, skills, knowledge, understanding from years gone by. You can't transport freight efficiently in the USA, contributing to this great economy, without the interstate system that President Eisenhower had built in the 1950s after he returned from World War II and saw the German Autobahn system.
Yeah.
He was so impressed by the German Autobahn system, he got back to the USA, eventually became president. He was an Allied general, obviously. Eventually becomes president, and then says, hey, you know what idea I've had for years since I was in Germany in 1945? It's to make our own Autobahn. It didn't exist before that. They built the Autobahn, or the interstate system, and now they can transport goods efficiently. And my point is that when your GDP drops by 3%, I don't know how to explain this. It's almost impossible to do. It's almost impossible to go that much backwards in such a short span of time.
Yeah.
Because some of what the layer cake or the ziggurat, the stepped pyramid, is built on almost can't be undone. To shave 2.8% off your GDP in a month is almost impossible to do. You could have nationwide strikes for 3 months and not lose 2.8% of your GDP.
Sure.
And that reveals that there are indeed very, very grave problems in the US economy, in global finance, in geopolitical relationships. And the boffins can see that. And they're saying, this is so bad, I think I'm going to buy gold. I'm not going to invest in bonds or the stock market or anything else. I'm going for gold. Which brings me to another point that many people don't appreciate. Somebody phoned me for precious metals advice recently. And I gave them a little bit of a rundown, and we don't have the time to go through all of it now. But the long and the short of it is, not only are gold and silver good stores of value, but they are also fantastic investments. Now, the best precious metals advisors would say to you, you shouldn't look at them as investments. However, just for 1 minute, I'm going to illustrate to you how good they are as investments, even though you should not regard them as investments. Here is the gold price performance I'm reading now in US dollars over a period of time. 30 days, it's gone up 2.16%. 6 months, 15.33%. 1 year, 38%. 5 years, 100.54%. And over 20 years, 575%. Now I'll give you the silver price performance in US dollars. Over 30 days, it's gone up 4.6%. Over 6 months, 9.5%. Over 1 year, 33.7%. Over 5 years, 133%. And over 20 years, 356%. And this is the future paper spot price.
Wow.
This is not even the real price of silver.
Yeah.
Unless you were Elon Musk's brother, or are Elon Musk's brother, and you were one of the first investors in SpaceX and Tesla and PayPal and so on, unless you've had uncanny good fortune, or unless you're a US senator or congressman relying on inside trading to make the most miraculous, unbelievable choices all the way for decades, your performance in the stock market cannot remotely match this. Alan Gray, Sage Life, Old Mutual, Sanlam, they don't come close to this. And or let's say these performances. And these performances are regarded as not the ideal. The best precious metals experts will say to you, do not invest in them for the purposes of investment, hoping to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way. Even so, you can't match this performance. So that's what's going on in the world at the moment, Marius. I think I've done, unless you've got questions, a reasonably fair job of encapsulating it, fairly briefly. There are big dramas in the world, and the big boys can see it, and they are throwing money at the gold and silver market. So much so, I didn't mention this, that the future paper spot market is losing participants. You can see how much is being traded, in this that I've been reading from.
Yeah.
And the volume of trade has reduced dramatically, whereas the volume of trade in physical gold and silver has gone up so much that there is now roughly a 3-month waiting list. If you buy gold or silver and you demand, I want my gold, silver now, they'll say to you, 100%. See you in 93 days' time, 92 days' time, 96 days' time.
Sure. Yeah.
And the Commercial Metals Exchange in New York is running out of physical gold and silver. Every day for the past almost 100 days, jumbo jets have had to fly gold and silver from the London Bullion Metals Association, which is the equivalent of the COMEX, the Commercial Metals Exchange, overnight to New York to give the Americans gold and silver to fulfill physical demand. Every single night for almost 100 days. Yeah, I'll end with this. Yesterday I was in the spa, and an elderly lady and her daughter about my age, were looking at the prices of soups. And I was looking at something next to them, and they were talking very loudly. So I said, well, that one's 23, but this is 24. And the daughter said to me, yes, but this one's only got 3 sachets in it, and this one's got 4. She said to me, have you ever seen that before? I said, I've seen it before where Knorr sells 3 and Royco sells 4. I've never seen where exactly the same product, precisely, has a 3 sachet version or a 4 sachet version, and you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And the elderly lady said to me, what do you think of the prices? Is anything affordable anymore? And I said to her, ma'am, I don't shop very much. It's just my lifestyle. I'm a bachelor. I'm single. I buy my meat from a friend. I buy a whole sheep. And other than that, I don't really go near the shops terribly much. I said, but I can't believe the prices. I just can't get over what costs milk, what costs a Diet Pepsi. I said, is it just me or what? She said, no, it's not just you, my boy. My point being that is consumer price index increase. That is the price of goods increasing very dramatically as the value of money
Ja.
decreases. And that's what we're seeing in the gold. We're seeing the value of money decreasing so that it costs very much more to get goods such as gold in your hand.
Ja.
And as I've said half a dozen times already now, we're seeing the big boys of the world saying, right, I don't believe in this money anymore. I want real gold. And I think that's the big news, Marius, that overnight certain contracts went above $3,000 an ounce. It's huge. Absolutely enormous news. And that's all from me, Marius. Thank you very much.
Baie dankie Simon. Ja, weer eens baie interessant gewees. Weer eens baie geleer veral oor die goud en die silwerpryse en die dinge. En ja, soos jy gesê het, die mense het daar in 2019 2020 gepanic buy, die mense self, maar nou is dit asof die wêreldmaatskappye panic buy en dit opstoot. En ja, net so spanner in die works is maar gewoonlik voordat 'n oorlog uitbreek het ons daai tendens nou al deur die jare gesien dat die maatskappye iewes skielik goud en silwer koop. So vat dit, maak mee wat jy wil as jy luisteraar, maar dit is die tendens van die jare. So ek saam met jou 100% daar.
Yeah, that's the big news for the week, Marius. Definitely unquestioned, huge, absolutely huge. Anyway, goodbye and God bless everybody. And once again, my apologies to everybody for messing up my day yesterday. It was actually my own fault when all is said and done. I got carried away and I was unable to meet Marius yesterday evening to record this.
Geen probleem, Simon. Lekker dag vir jou verder.
Dieselfde vir julle. Totsiens.
Dis hy, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.